from the late Senator John Glenn, who understood the value of telling and sharing the story of our veterans. From the initial view, the architecture impresses upon visitors the importance of what lies within. Seeming to rise organically from the earth, the building itself is a symbol of our nation's veterans and their resilient spirit and unending commitment to making this country stronger. Once inside the museum, visitors embark on a narrative journey, following exhibitions that focus on the servicemen and women and their families. Individual stories and shared experiences are illustrated through personal artifacts, quotes, letters, photographs, and powerful films of veterans telling their unique story in their own words. The National Veterans Memorial and Museum. It's more than a museum. It's the new home of the brave. Plan your visit today.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us at the National Veterans Memorial and Museum at our latest installment of Virtual Rally Point. My name is Colonel Retired Bill Butler, Chief of Staff, and on behalf of our President and CEO, Lieutenant General Mike Farrader, we just want to welcome you and thank you for participating. We've got a great program today. We're going to talk to two amazing veterans and nonprofit leaders and their experience, and they're going to talk about transforming veterans through agriculture. You know, you go back to the founding of our republic, and soldiers finished their service and returned to their farms to take care of their families and their communities. And in fact, Cincinnati, where I grew up, is named after Roman statesman, soldier, general Cincinnatus. He was a retired general. He was called back to lead Rome against an invading tribe and neighbor, which he did. Once the invading tribe was defeated, he gave up the reins of power, returning to his farm, which was unprecedented. So you go back to, you know, Western Civ in our founding, and there's a tradition of soldiers and farming and agriculture. So joining us today are Richard Murphy and Jon Jackson. Like I said, both combat veterans, both farmers, and they run programs assisting veterans who want to get into farming or are searching for connections they have missing from their lives. Rich is a third-generation Air Force veteran. He helped found and runs a nonprofit, Veterans to Farmers, in Colorado. Jon, an Army Ranger, an Army veteran, runs two nonprofits, STAG VETS and Comfort Farms in Milledgeville, Georgia. So I'm going to pass it off to both Rich and Jon, and would ask Rich, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background, and then we'll hand off to Jon so he can share his story.
You bet, man. It's great to be here with both you guys. I have to tell you that intro, I have not had an opportunity to see your guys' museum, and that is absolutely stunning. I'm going to have to make my way to Ohio. I want to see that place. That's incredible. It's beautiful.
You've got an open invitation.
Well, awesome. Well, thanks for having me. Like you mentioned, my name is Richard Murphy, third-generation Air Force veteran. I spent most of my time in the military and security forces, hung out there in Georgia, where Jon's at for a while, a little too warm for my Alaska blood, so I had to leave. Made my way here to Colorado. My wife also served 10 years in the Air Force, so we're a military family. And we both decided to get out and put our roots down here in Colorado. So I live up north and own about 35 acres and kind of homestead out here and hang out in the country where it's nice and quiet and calm. And then about 7 years ago, I got involved with the nonprofit world, and that's kind of how I got introduced to that process. I actually knew nothing about nonprofits. I just really liked plants and farming and thought that'd be a fun thing to do. And me and another veteran, a fellow veteran, he's a Marine, decided to kind of establish the organization here in Colorado, and that was about 7 years ago. So we've taught classes since then, pretty much to veterans all over throughout the United States. It's been an incredible opportunity to see, I think, how many veterans are really interested in agriculture and look at it as a possibility for a lifestyle and a form of employment. And we just keep doing it year after year. That's really it in a nutshell.
All right, great. John, how about you?
Yeah, first of all, thanks guys for having me on. It's an honor to again link up with you, Rich. Over our short time of being farmers, and thank you, Colonel, for inviting me on to this platform. So again, my name is Jon Jackson. I'm the executive director of STAG VETS Inc. and the founder of Comfort Farms. Comfort Farms is a program underneath STAG VETS for one of the programs that we actually help veterans with. And it kind of got spearheaded because of my service in the Ranger Battalion. I did 6 total deployments and served 40 months overseas my first 8 years. So I spent a lot of time overseas. Started out with 3rd ID, 115 Infantry, and then shortly after that moved over to the Ranger Battalion, where I met Captain Kale Comfort. Captain Kale Comfort got killed on May 8th, 2010. He was a real good dude. He was, really left a really good impression on me. And I was dealing with so many issues at the time. I had a TBI that I didn't know about. I was going through chronic post PTSD. Those are all recorded, but for me, I didn't feel like I had PTSD. I didn't even know what that meant. Being in a Ranger Regiment, it's just rock and rolling. But one thing that the Ranger Regiment did, they had a segment where they had our leaders come out on this, on this special operations thing, where they were talking about their feelings. It's kind of taboo in the military to talk about your feelings, right? To say, hey, man, I'm going through this, I'm going through that. And so you just suck it up and drive on. But there I saw my leaders, first sergeants and command sergeant majors and our commanders talking about the things that were affecting them. And I'm going to tell you, had it not been for that, I would have never opened up about any issues that I've had. The downside to that was that when I did open up, I opened up Pandora's box, right? Mm-hmm. And all the things that I've been through started to come to a head because those things were suppressed prior to this. When I started getting into a situation where I was having, neurological issues, I was having seizures and things like that, and I couldn't deploy anymore, I couldn't jump anymore, and not that I really enjoyed jumping anyway. Let me put that out there, to everyone.
Well, I always like to say I didn't like jumping, but I liked hanging around guys who did like jumping.
Yeah, absolutely right. So I get out there and I realized they had to medically discharge me. And when they medically discharged me, I was sitting in the space thinking about what am I going to do? So I volunteered with so many different programs, to help veterans. A lot of them were homeless veterans. I went out and I worked at all these places and I just gave my time. And at the end of the day, the one thing that I did not see was the impact. I saw what took place at that moment, but the impact of how those veterans were affected by, the stand downs and things like that, I couldn't see that. And I put myself in a situation as a veteran that, hey, if I'm homeless, yeah, I can get all this stuff, but that's really not taking care of my needs. And I started deep diving into what are my needs. And I came to this conclusion that the best thing for me and the best thing for a lot of vets that I know is just really having a good quality of life. We sacrifice so much overseas, especially in the time of war. And it's just not us GWAT soldiers. It's anybody who's been to war from, in our era, from, the world wars all the way down to us. You give up so much when you join the military. And so what that led to for me was to go ahead and really kind of deep dive into solving issues from the root down. And that's kind of our philosophy, because there's a lot of things that are unseen, like our soil. There's so much microbial life in our soil. And if we don't tend to it, we're not going to get the best that we need on the outside. And so I kind of use that philosophy in creating Comfort Farms, and naming it after my Ranger buddy, Kale Comfort, to really reflect on the sacrifices that he made and really pinpoint that Kyle did not become a Ranger because he wanted a comfortable life. And with that being said, Comfort Farm's whole model is based on that you only grow in your discomfort. And so when people come here, we put them in a situation where they are uncomfortable, but when they do learn those tools, they can use those tools to really do amazing things. And that's the premise of Comfort Farms.
That's awesome. Hey, let's transition back to Rich. So Rich, you're in service, you're thinking about getting out. What are you thinking about doing when you're going to transition into being a civilian and leave the military? You know, every veteran has to do it at some point, whether you get out at 2 years or 32 years. And, you know, there's so many things going through. At least when I was transitioning, getting ready to retire, it was, you know, God, what am I going to do? I've been an infantry officer, paratrooper, and Army Ranger for the last, 29 years, 27 years. What am I going to do? So in your case, what was going through your head?
I think probably what was going through most veterans' head, like, oh man, what the bleep do I do now? That was definitely it. I left the military kind of abruptly. I actually originally, coming from a military family, I had planned to make it a career. And after, 4 years and some change, I had some experiences and things that I just, I ended up leaving the military, and it wasn't something that I had planned to do. I remember when I first got out, there's that initial shock, right? I have all this freedom. Like I can leave my house. Like I can go 8 hours away from my house and nobody's going to call me. I don't report into nobody. So I think there's this initial rush, but it was once I started getting back into, I think, the civilian sector that I did as a veteran realize that I was different, that this was not something I was expecting. And, we hear this regularly, over the last 8 years, as we've talked to veterans that come into the course. That seems to be one of the biggest obstacles, obviously, right? This reintegration. And I think a lot of times it's not just the idea of reintegration, but like, how do you identify as a civilian, after you basically, stopped doing that? And I always tell people one of the things that had the biggest impact on me is I remember about 6 months prior to getting out of the military, I did a presidential detail. So, I was working with, these pretty high speed people from Washington. It was fast paced, really honorable position. I got the cool presidential coin. And 6 months later, I had a job at Jiffy Lube cleaning out cars, and my boss had an ankle bracelet. He was on probation. And I remember in that moment, I thought, to myself, like, what is happening? Like, this is not what I thought I was going to do. Right. And it was a bit of a struggle. And this is something I also saw, like, with my father. My father was a SEER instructor. So, he spent 12 years teaching people how to survive in, terrible conditions. And he left the military. And this was in the 80s, before there was awesome TV shows about survival, so there wasn't really any jobs for SEER instructors. And he was cleaning carpets. So I think you see this a lot of times. It's not just that reintegration, but a sense of value and a sense of like that you belong to something that's bigger than just changing oil. Now I eventually moved on. I actually got myself a job in social work. I spent about 6 or 7 years in social work, which I really loved doing. But I also had the same problem that I think a lot of other veterans experience as well. I was basically losing my mind in a cubicle, even when I was helping people. And my anxiety was out of control. I was undiagnosed at that time for PTSD. So I was trying to manage all these things at the same time. I wanted to help people, but I wasn't helping myself, And I, at the time, lived in a city and had a huge garden in my backyard. I've always been a bit of a plant nerd. And I was just gardening all the time when I wasn't at work. And that was kind of it. That was the intro to it. I realized, like, the only time I find peace, the only time I actually feel like my brain is calmed down is when I'm working in this soil. And John said it the best, all that life in the soil, all the life that you're creating, the attention to detail that it requires for you to maintain that. These are like these qualities that are innate to us as veterans. And so I think they get that, they feel that similarity when they get involved with it. And I think that's why it's attractive to a lot of veterans, as well as the fact that, many of us veterans, I think, we really enjoy being in nature. We really enjoy being outside. We don't belong indoors. And it provides us that opportunity. So I think, like a lot of veterans, when I was looking at getting out, I didn't really have a plan. I just knew I didn't want to be in the military anymore. And ironically, it doesn't take but about, I think, maybe 5 or 6 years. When I left, I didn't really talk to any other veterans. So I didn't have any veteran friends. I actually kind of just disappeared. Didn't realize I needed that veteran community. But I think a lot of veterans, once we're out after a while and we get kind of reconnect with any kind of a veteran community, it's almost like a light bulb turns on. We're like, oh, there it is. Like, these people get me, And so when you can take veterans and hang out in a big field in the dirt, and even if it's, pulling weeds for 4 hours, that's where it all comes out. That's where the talk happens. That's where people connect. Like we joke in the class, we don't really do therapy. None of us are therapists, but you get them out in the dirt and start hanging out. It's going to happen. It's going to happen all by itself. So, yeah, I think it's like a lot of veterans, a lot of confusion, a lot of disappointment, a lot of adjustments, That's why I think it's so important, man, to reconnect, find a way to connect with the veteran community where you have that ability to be around people that are like-minded, that you understand. So.
Yeah, it's no surprise because you enter service and you go to, boot camp or basic training or whatnot, and all vestiges of you as an individual are ripped apart, and you're built up as a member of a team, and the team becomes paramount. The success and failure is because of the team, whether it's a fire team, a squad, a platoon, whatever. And then you do that for 3, 4, 10 years. You're doing deployments, supporting the team and the effort and the mission, and then all of a sudden you're kind of jumping out of an airplane without a parachute, so to speak. Yeah. And you don't have that team to rely on. So you're absolutely right. So many of us, when we get out, we're trying to find out, okay, how can I find and establish those connections that I had for however many years in service. And, you go to community wherever in Colorado or Georgia or Ohio, and you don't necessarily have that sense of connection that you had when you were in the military. I want to cut real quick to a short video, Rich, that features you, and you talk a little bit more detail about the connection and the tribe and the importance of the program.
Many benefits, I think, to getting involved in agriculture. The obvious ones are, I think, that you get that opportunity to be in nature. You get to be part of a natural system. For veterans, when they're returning back home, there's this gap, I think, that we don't even recognize as veterans ourselves. We don't feel like we have a community. I think a lot of ways it's the purpose. You miss the purpose. You're looking for that purpose that you had when you were in the military. And I think one of the biggest disconnects for veterans returning to the civilian sector is they often can't find that purpose, or they can't find their tribe, if you will. And I think the opportunity that we provide veterans is we get them out here in the field together, and they start playing in the dirt, and they start planting things. And it doesn't take long before they start talking about their experiences in the military. It's not long before people begin to realize that there are other veterans that are like them, that have felt the way they have felt. They have experienced the same things that they've experienced. And being able to have that connection and that opportunity to spend time with other veterans and learn something like agriculture that's so connected to a natural process, I think just creates a place where healing and opportunity happen naturally.
All right, so John, same question for you. You're thinking about getting out, or you're medically retired. You're suddenly thrust out, and why get into the nonprofit, and then what drove you into farming?
Yeah, that's a good question, man. I tell you. So I get out, and I'm thinking about what do I want to do? And the first thing that I gravitated toward was making excellent barbecue. I wanted to be the best barbecue pit master ever. And then I start thinking, well, hell, I don't even know how to raise pigs, or not even raise pigs, but what comes first, like the chicken and the egg? Does the restaurant come first or the farm? Because I really wanted to raise my own hogs, and but I knew that I wasn't a farmer. I didn't come from a farming background, so I just started deep diving into this, and I really thought that there's a natural gravitation for veterans to being in the agriculture. And one day I would love to have create my own restaurant. But what I decided to do was to, instead of do a for-profit business, I figured that there would be tons of veterans like myself who would need to learn this process. And so therefore I decided to start a nonprofit that would be focused on healing, but also the kind of like the preemptive stuff that we typically don't think about. Rich talked about it before, finding that tribe. We put so much money and so much attention into the crisis and the fallout of veterans. There's homeless shelters everywhere. There's drug and alcohol, addiction places everywhere. But no money is being thrown towards stopping the hemorrhaging, right? Mm-hmm. If we continue to put money at the end of the process, we will never solve the process. So for me, being able to come back up and to create a space where veterans have a place when that vet like myself, who's going through the worst possible time of his life, the time to talk to that vet is not at the time of crisis. The people who are closer to that vet, the ones who are working with him every day, who are socializing with him every day, those are the people that will be akin to being able to give him the resources. And so for me, I wanted something that was a little bit more meaningful than just saying, hey, I'm helping veterans. I wanted to be able to help veterans have the better quality of life. I can say just right now, I'm working with a vet he's had a hard time for the past 10, 12 months, really hard time. And we're talking, suicidal thoughts, ideations, all those type of things. He's been working on a farm here, really, instead of going out and doing, living a bad lifestyle, he's coming to a place where he's able to manage his relationships. Him and his family are doing excellent. And now he's just received a 6-figure income to go overseas and to do some work. And he is absolutely ecstatic because he feels relevant again. And he says, John, I would not be able to be in this position to even accept that job had I not been able to shed all my insecurities and vulnerabilities here at the farm in a safe place with other vets. And for me, that is the most impactful thing, to hear women and wives and family members say how much their vets have improved over the past couple of years by working on a farm. I absolutely love that. If I died today, I would be a happy man because of all the wonderful people that I've met and the lives that we've changed. So would I do it all over again if I had to? Absolutely.
Yeah, you got to pay it forward. We all didn't get to where we are because of how wonderful we are. We got there because of great people that we met along the way who helped us and mentored us and shaped us. And, anytime we can pay it forward and help take care of those who are struggling is incredibly rewarding. So, John, you've got a very powerful TED Talk video. I want to share just a little bit about that to dig a little bit deeper into some of the things you just discussed, if that's okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So there I was, watching the most beautiful sunset in my entire life. I closed my eyes, the rays were on my face, it warmed me. But the most interesting thing about this was that I was at peace. I was finally at peace after 10 years of constant fight and constant struggle. I recently just lost my wife. She divorced me while I was overseas after my 6th deployment. And the monster that my family saw that I pushed away really caused me to want to make different decisions. And so there I was, I found myself sitting, watching the sunset. I had a gun in my right hand, and the sun was coming down to the horizon. So this was my last sunset, and I knew it. And as the sun started to drift and started to go down, I started to think to myself, it's going to be okay. Everybody's going to be okay. I'm not going to scare my kids. I'm not going to scare my wife. I'm not going to freak out the daggone mailman. And I knew that as I moved on from life, everybody would be fine. And with 15 minutes go to below the horizon, I just sat back, took a deep breath, and something amazing happened. My son walked in, and he said, "Dad, are you ready to eat?" Totally derailed me. I was totally in another state of mind. And I told him, yeah, son, I'm going to go eat. Give me a minute. Backed away from the table, put the gun down. And I decided that I would get up. I took him out to dinner. We went to barbecue B-dubs and sat down. We ordered some food, and I looked right across from him. I saw how beautiful he was. And what I did not take into consideration was what he would have saw later on. I did not play the tape all the way through. Had it not been for my son to walk in that day, I would not be here talking to you guys today. And so when you ask me, do I believe in magic? Yes, I do. This talk is about agro-therapy and the conditioning, or how to condition vets to their new normal. And we're going to go through that. And I know that was a powerful thing, but I had to let you guys know the impact that what this day means for me and why I'm here. My name is Jon Jackson, United States Army Ranger, served with the 75th Ranger Regiment. I did 6 tours, 2 to Iraq and 4 to Afghanistan. I lost a lot of buddies along the way. At war is where I feel most comfortable. When I got here, there was nothing for me to do to become or utilize my skills or to be engaged. There's a lot of confusion. There was no programs for a disabled vet like myself to be involved and to use my skill set. So I created a nonprofit called STAG VETS. And as a ranger, we have this thing called sua sponte. It's a Latin term for of their own accord. Grab the bull by the horns and do what you need to do. And so that's what I did. I said, you know what? There's nothing out there for vets. I'm going to create it. And so I created this organization called STAG VETS. And at STAG VETS, what we did, a bunch of problem solvers, think tank, and some beer drinkers. One of the things that we decided that we would do, we'd create Comfort Farms, which is the first acute veterans crisis agriculture center located in Georgia. And I'm going to tell you guys about that today. And so I took my team, said, hey team, this is what we're going to do. We're going to talk about how we're going to solve the root causes for veterans all throughout America, starting with issues that I have. And so I sat them down and I had this, and I explained to them how we're going to use agriculture to do this. Well, my arts director, Melissa, she stopped me and she said, John, she goes, you guys are like, you're like butterflies. And I said, hey, Melissa, never use the word butterfly and ranger in the same context, okay? But one of the things that she told me, she said, no, listen, she goes, you know, you guys are like caterpillars. You crunch, munch, and destroy, and then you go into the cocoon phase of your life. And then what you're telling me from what I'm hearing you say, John, is that your organization is going to come in, you're going to help, you're going to mold, shape, and condition, and then your guys turn into butterflies. And I said, you know, Melissa.
All right, what a great story. Thanks for sharing that and letting us share it with the audience, John. So you both talk about solving issues and connecting, and you know, Rich, you talked about therapy. You know, it's not therapy, but it's incredibly therapeutic to be, you know, getting your hands in the soil and getting dirty and being able to, you know, share in that camaraderie. Mm-hmm. Can you guys talk about some of the successes of your programs? Rich, over to you first.
We've got, you know, I wanted to just quickly point out too, John hit on this, and I think it's important to recognize it. You know, when we're talking about veterans, a lot of times you do see these, you know, homeless centers and all these things. There's a lot of resources for veterans, and that's great. We need resources, but I also think sometimes what can get lost in that is that we don't think about the fact that that veteran coming out of the military has an incredible skill set that they can apply to the civilian sector. And so we can kind of get bogged down on all the negative things that veterans encounter. And I think it's important to recognize that when you have a veteran who is in a good position, they're healthy, you know, they're taking care of themselves, so they have a massive impact on, you know, our society. They're more likely to start, you know, businesses. They're more likely to donate. They're more likely to be part of the public system, you know, whether that's running for office or being part of their local, you know, offices. So it's really important to recognize that, you know, I think there are more veterans out there that if they got involved in their veteran community, and these are those veterans that are leaders in our community, and they kind of looked out and reached down to help this group of veterans that might be struggling up. We have this great capacity, I think, to bring veterans into the civilian sector that could be highly effective. And that's kind of that goal, right? So when a veteran comes to our organization and they say, you know, I'm just not feeling well, I'm not in the right place, you know, all of these things we've already heard. The goal there is to get them in the right place, and in a manner that's comfortable to them. John mentioned it earlier too. I think my favorite thing to hear is from a spouse when they tell me, like, you know, my husband or my wife would not leave the house and they are excited to come to your farm. I have not seen them excited in years, you know? And so it's that ability to create that community of veterans that reach down and help veterans up. I always say, like, you know, it's not the VA's job. It's not, you know, any person's job. It's our job as a veteran community to help each other out. And that's what these organizations do. They create a space where those veterans can get together and help each other out. And when you do that right, the success that you see is incredible. You know, we have one veteran that she came to us from California. She has a pretty large family, a couple of kids that are on the spectrum. She was in the military. She was a photographer. You know, unfortunately, that had a lot of impact on her. Her husband was also military. He got out, she got out, you know, they were trying to make it work. And when we met her, you know, she was in a pretty tough spot. And she's now an incredible leader in our community, running not just her own business where she's, you know, creating value-added products out of lavender and things like that, but where she's actually working with other veterans in the community now, you know, actually reaching out, paying it forward like we talked about. You know, those are the success stories that I think are incredible. It's not like, hey, you know, Joe went and bought 10 acres of land and now he's farming. I love it when I hear them say, now that I have this farm, I want to help other veterans just like me. You know, that to me is the success story, is when you can create not just a healthy veteran, but a healthy veteran that wants a healthy veteran community. In agriculture, you can look around no matter what state you're in. A lot of the farmers in that state know each other. It's a community. We work together. You know, you have your local extension offices and you have all sorts of those resources where we get together. You know, me and John have met at the Farmer Veteran Coalition, a big meeting of a bunch of veterans getting together, talking about farming and drinking beer. You know, so it's that community that I think drives these missions forward and actually makes it successful. You know, if it's just, you know, you help one veteran out and he goes back up to his land or her land and secludes himself and just farms, like, that's not the mission. You know what I mean? And it doesn't have to be a farm. We say this all the time. A lot of people they can't afford land. I live in Colorado and land is expensive here. You're not going to find a whole lot of it, you know, but you can create a heck of a garden in your backyard. You can be part of your food system through urban agriculture. You know, you can take control of your health through that process. And you see that with a lot of veterans. That's that first entry. You know, when a veteran says, I'm tired of feeling this way, I'm tired of being this way, I want to be healthy. The first step is what you eat. It's your food. You know, so you have to grab a hold of that. And you can go to a grocer and buy healthy food, but it's like a 2-for-1 when you grow it. You know, it's not just good food for you, but it's good practice. It's good for your mind. It's good for your body. It's good for your soul. You know, so that's that kind of success that we're looking for. I want veterans to not only feel like they're empowered to grow their own food, but they feel empowered to connect with their veteran community and reach down for that veteran that was like them a year or two or more back and say, you know, I know what that feels like. Let me help you out. Let me bring you out to the farm where you can hang out and, you know, we can just chill. You know, we don't have to do anything. There's something about being present in nature that I think allows us to kind of feel more grounded. It's an opportunity to reset. You know, it may not fix everything, but it's a hell of a good start. That's for sure.
All right, John, over to you. What kind of success stories have you seen just in the couple of years that you've been doing Comfort Farms and STAG VETS?
Oh man! So first, I want to tie on the number of veterans that come to the place, along with their families, and the transformation that they themselves have made. The farm is here to absorb those issues. The farm is here to, we call it kind of a covert curriculum to help people shed their issues and move on to the next phase in their life. And like Rich said, not everybody becomes a farmer. We realize that only 1% of our nation are farmers. That 1% feeds the rest. And ironically, 1% protects the rest. Out of that 1%, 70% of those have a rural background. So veterans in farming is a huge thing. And when folks come here, they're able to connect with something much deeper than themselves, their primal self. The farm, although not one of our vets said, it has all all the relics of war without the incoming ordnance, right? And so, and what they mean by that is that you are using the same things in war that you would use that you're going to use at the farm, which is, you know, critical thinking, problem solving, right? All your sensory skills, being able to think on the fly and think quick. You know, you might come in, and we know as veterans we love to control every outcome. Well, the farm has other plans, and if you got a problem with control, get on the farm, because it will help you out, and you'll realize there's nothing you can control. But being back here in this life, those things help you to adjust to civilian life in a way that is very impactful, because we can't control other people's lives. We can't control the outcome of things. And so we have to be okay with what we do as just a meaningful practice every day. And those things help out. I am so happy when I see Vietnam veterans come to this farm and they tell me, John, this is what the VFW should be like. And I tell them, we have an opportunity now to make things right, not just for post-war, post-GWAT vets, but for all vets, okay? Mm-hmm. We still drink beer, but that's not the only thing that we do. We give the community a chance who haven't served before to come here and serve alongside of vets. And so it's this slow walk, this progression of community and people that are coming together, and vets who are having issues, being able to do that in kind of like microdose of just, hey, you know, being a little bit warm and actively, you know, sharing in these experiences that builds beautiful relationships along a long time. I do this event here where we have veterans and chefs. They come to this place. It's called the Les Pierres de Mont Boucherie. And we've had more veterans this past year than we've had at any other time, more chefs, more farmers. They all get together, and the meaningful relationships that come out of this thing is absolutely amazing. So I am happy. And I will say the number one success story is myself. I almost took my life. I was in a very, very bad place. I wanted to isolate myself. I wanted to run away from my family. I wanted to run away from everybody. I'm here now. And when guys and women come into this space, I can share my story, and they realize that they're not the only one. And from that, it's propelled other people to do similar things where they're giving back in a much meaningful way. And like you said, Colonel, things were paid forward to me, and I had good leadership. You know, when I say thank you, they say, John, all I want you to do is pay it forward. And I'm living that creed. So thanks for this opportunity.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we do have a question on the Facebook channel. It's from Christina Mungala. She's asking, she wants to get into aquaponics farming. Do either of you have any experience or recommendations for Christina on aquaponics?
It just depends on where she's at. I don't know. You know, here in Colorado, there are a couple of opportunities. There's actually a place called Colorado Aquaponics. It's pretty simple to remember that one. But they're pretty much the leaders of that here. We do have a course that covers hydroponics, or controlled environmental agriculture, which is kind of the prelude to that process. There's also a really good online resource, you know, if you don't have something local to you, called Upstart University. And they have an entire online curriculum that goes through the hydroponics and aquaponics kind of sections, gives you that opportunity to understand it. Aquaponics is pretty incredible. I think it's one of the technologies that's still building up in context of how it's going to play a role in our agricultural system. I joke I'm from Alaska, so I grew up eating halibut and salmon. And so you can really only, the two main protein sources you see in aquaponic systems are catfish and tilapia, which, you know, they just aren't really on my menu. So you really have to like catfish or tilapia. So if you like them fish, you can definitely use that system and get a little extra out of it. But it is a very environmentally kind of conscious process that allows you to grow, you know, your leafy greens, you know, and your protein sources in the same system. But I would check out online, also check out locally, see what resources you have in the state that you live in. There's probably some, but it's really kind of just getting started on it. And there is a really good book out there called the Do-It-Yourself Aquaponics Manual, for those people that want to kind of do the at-home aquaponics, where you're putting that system together, maybe using YouTube a little bit. You know, we can go down that rabbit hole, finding ways to kind of create your own system as well.
Okay, great. John, any recommendations, John?
Yeah, I would like to add on to what Rich said. Number one, there's kind of some taboo with like tilapia. I would not do tilapia in my aquaponics, even though that's like the standard. But a lot of people are off put by tilapia and catfish. Now that doesn't mean that if I have an aquaponics system, but I use regional local fish like brim and some catfish like channel catfish that actually grow. But there's other things that we could do in the winter, like use trout, right? So I could also use trout in that system and grow veg. Our aquaponics system is really, really great. We grow celery in it right now, and the system is so good that an in-ground system would not keep up with our. Excuse me, I got a bee around me. I'm allergic. Yeah, but the system works really, really well, and it's pretty profitable. I recommend it. Take everything that Rich said, and definitely go down there and really deep dive into that. But if you're also looking to do aquaponics as a business, find someone who's actually making money at it, because there's a lot of educational diagrams, and there's a lot of grants that people are doing to fund their project, but that's not realistic when it comes to someone who's looking to make money at it. Go find a profitable model that someone's using that you can also replicate. And the biggest thing is, I believe that the best markets are the ones that don't exist. So if you can create a market out of something that's viable from learning from someone who's actually making money from it in your own area, it's a win-win-win.
Okay, awesome. So Rich, if somebody wants to get involved in the programs, Veterans to Farmers, what do they need to do? Where's the best place to start? And if you can describe the programs a little bit.
You bet. So this year we're pretty much, our programs are almost full. We actually in the spring, so every year around February is when we open up our applications. And we take applications from February until about May. We have two programs that we run. The first one is our market farming class. So that's a 21-week course where the veteran comes out onto the farm with us, and they spend that 21 weeks through the entire season. So Colorado has about a 22-week grow season here. And so they're there at the beginning, and they get to experience, everything from the moment we start all the way through the season, all the way to the end. They're involved in all of our markets. They get the opportunity, and this is through Denver Botanic Gardens Chatfield Farms, who we partnered with. They get the opportunity as well to tour a bunch of the farms here in Colorado so they can see how people are doing agriculture differently. A lot of times agriculture, what's interesting about agriculture is it's just a single word, but there are so many ways to be involved in agriculture. And what we find is a lot of times veterans will show up with an idea of what they want to do. And then after 21 weeks, they have this entire new outlook on what agriculture is. So we've had veterans that are mushroom farmers, yak farmers, hemp growers, veg producers. I mean, you name it, usually they end up doing it. Some of them actually, ironically, don't even get into agriculture, but they become interested in the technology in agriculture. We've had veterans go back to school for soil science degrees and things like that. So really that 21 weeks is meant to give them the full experience of a farming season on a market farm if your goal is to take food to market. And it's a great course. It's incredible. It's probably one of our more popular ones. Unfortunately, the application for that course has already closed this year. We've already picked that class. And then, of course, we'll do it again next year. So it's something you're interested in. Definitely, put that on your calendar for February of next year. The course is completely free. We actually pay our veterans while they're with us to try and help offset some of that cost, whether they're traveling from out of state or, sometimes childcare, things like that. And then the other course that we do is our Controlled Environmental Agriculture course. That's the hydroponic course. It's a 10-week course, and its goal, much like the market farming course, is to get you introduced to what the greenhouse industry looks like, or maybe what indoor growing looks like, whether that's, using a shipping container or just a building or a room or something like that. And then we really kind of cover all of the ways in which controlled agriculture can have an influence on our food system. When we talk about there being less land available or, conserving resources, and John mentioned it as well with the aquaponics system about how well they do. There's a lot of this new technology. It's not even new technology, but technology that we're really kind of just grabbing onto now, that provides us these opportunities to grow food in places where we wouldn't normally be able to, in inner cities and things like that, which has a huge impact when we talk about, that food security. So that course really gives that veteran over a 10-week period to see how that greenhouse runs. They spend that time working in the greenhouse as well on the curriculum. We really modeled that kind of military training, like you read a little bit, then you do it, you read a little bit, then you do it, kind of process. And that's been very successful. We've seen that work out really well with all of our veterans. That course, I think the application actually closes next week. We're just finishing up our interviews for that one. And then again, it is worth mentioning, there are a lot of veterans that'll take them about a year to plan to come out and do our course. We have veterans in the class that are literally leaving the military. They're at that very end, the last 6 months, and they've released them to come hang out with us. So we've had veterans that are active all the way up to Vietnam veterans, so we take any veteran that's interested in learning. We also recognize that some veterans have gotten out and had problems. So even if you have a felony, we will still look at your application. We want to get you in here. We know that there's a lot of times where, you were just in a bad situation. So we try to make sure there's no barriers to that. And that's really the goal. If you're a veteran and you're interested in agriculture on any level and you just don't know where to start, we try to kind of create a space where you can do that and feel a little bit comfortable. I always joke that on the first day of class, like it's a room full of veterans. We're all just staring at each other with a blank stare, uncertain what the hell we're all doing here. And within 2 weeks, we're making fun of each other for being in whatever branch we were in. The jokes start coming out. So It's just making that first step. That's kind of the goal of it.
Awesome. John, what about you? If somebody wants to get involved in either STAG VETS or Comfort Farms, where do they need to go? What do they need to do?
I'm sorry. I got a bunch of pigs making noise and sheep. So excuse me for all that drama in the background.
That's right.
Hey, so we just started last year a program called Ag Tech to Success. And it was a NIFA grant that we won and also an NRCS grant that's given us funding for the next 3 years, where we actually have veterans come out to learn sustainable farming. And it's actually called the Sustainable Small Farms Agricultural Technician Certification. I partnered with Central Georgia Technical College, Fort Valley University, and Georgia College, where they're bringing in kind of the academic in-school portion of it. And then Comfort Farms is being used as a lab to actually learn within this process. So it's a 17 credit hour. You get 17 credit hours. There's 2 cohorts that are, I think, roughly about, we're looking at about 8 to 10 weeks each. And it's a 1 year split up in between. There's online classes for this summer. And then we get right back into it in the fall. And it's open. We have open enrollment for anyone at this time. Our biggest thing is moving not just with our market and being able to sell, but what we're creating is called the Agro-Culinary Academy with this. And so we're bringing culinary into this too, because we feel that the biggest impact for veterans or any farmer is not just growing food, but how can you utilize that food in a way where it makes sense to your consumer and it makes sense to the people that you're selling to, your buyers, right? And so by understanding how food is utilized through all cultures, because as a farmer, you're going to get several different type of people that want to come to your food. You become a much better impactful salesman when you can talk to someone who's from Ecuador, Peru, or South Africa, or Asia, or Alaska. Anyone who comes in, you really knowing the history of where food comes from. And so that's kind of where we kind of push a lot of our vets to understand how to tell stories of heritage and heirloom seeds and those varieties. And ironically, they learn how to tell their story better as well, right? And so those are the things that we do. But our courses are mainly focused on the culinary world with growing and giving back to the community. Okay.
Yeah, I follow you on Facebook, and some of the things you post about heirloom produce and livestock are really interesting. So I learn something every time you're posting. So I appreciate that. So if somebody is wanting to get into farming or agriculture, but they can't come to Georgia, they can't come to Colorado. Any recommendations from either of you on where they need to go to look for programs in their state?
There's a few opportunities. There's, the Farmer Veteran Coalition is always a great connection. That's probably one of the better ones. They're plugged in nationally. Anytime I have somebody that reaches out to me from, a state where I'm unfamiliar with maybe what programs they have, I always tell them, reach out to these guys and see if maybe they've got a connection there. If you can't find a connection that's veteran related, and I know sometimes that's, what you're looking for, I still encourage people to get involved in some capacity, volunteer on a local farm. Check out your botanic gardens or your local farm centers to see if they have any classes you can take. There's no bad class in agriculture. It all connects, whether it's beekeeping or raising pigs or growing food or any of it, it all connects. Your state extension offices. We work heavily with the Colorado State Extension Office. They've been an incredible partner and an incredible influence on helping us, here in the state. So reach out to your state extension office as well and see what's going on there. And then in some cases, what I like to mention to people is, if there's not a program there and you have the capacity and the knowledge, and maybe you're in that place to do it, there needs to be more programs. So don't think you can't do it. I knew nothing about a nonprofit when we started doing this, and I sure as heck did not expect to be running one. But I did know that, I had this background, and I did know that it helped me. And so that was what drove me to do it. I thought, I could probably share some of this cool plant stuff with people and they might like it as much as I do. So, start small. And then, most basic, grow something. Just grow something. One tomato plant, even if you've only got a balcony, just start growing things, because there is no better teacher than the actual process. Right. And that's where you really learn. So I would say just, don't be discouraged or feel like you can't do it. I like to mention that you have to kill a lot of stuff to get a green thumb. That's how that works. So stick with it. And if you get into it, man, just connect with other local gardeners, local farmers, find clubs, find people that are like-minded. You'll probably find a few veterans in there. We tend to linger in that direction. So even if you don't have that community, you might have the opportunity to start it. Okay,
great. John, anything to add on that?
Yes, definitely. And thanks, Rich, for all that information, because you're definitely spot on. The other thing I would like to add is to go out. If you got a year, and if you can't get to an agricultural program, go out and find farms and volunteer. Yeah. If you're volunteer, be a good volunteer, not toxic volunteer, right? Go in and learn what these folks are doing. They might do something very different from another farm. Just soak it in. Because at the end of that year process where you actually devote your time, you're going to learn so much. Another thing that I really want to focus on is that over 80% of our farmers now are up in age. They're approaching 60 or above, and they don't have any of their farming history or knowledge that they need to pass it on along. Those people within the next 10 years are not going to be around, with regards to being able to pass that knowledge on. It is imperative. It is imperative that we collectively go out and seek out and talk to this older generation of farmers. They have so much wealth, so much understanding about how agriculture has worked, what they've done for many, many, many decades. And it would be a shame that all that knowledge that they have does not get passed on. Traditionally, that's what we have to get back to, being able to pass on those traditions. And it starts with just simple conversations, simple talking of, hey, how did you grow watermelon? I asked an old black a long time. I said, how do you grow watermelon, man? I want to grow the best watermelon. His eyes lit up because he was so excited that I wanted to know these type of things. And, going in and just asking, hey, when do you start your collard greens? How do you do this? How do you do that? Our older generation are a wealth of knowledge. So tap into it. And it would be an education, an academic education can't pay for that type of experience and that type of learning that you're going to get from that. So that's what I encourage.
Okay. Hey, John. So Christine Slayball asked if the farm needs any volunteers, such as nurses. She wants to try to get involved. Do you have a requirement for medical support?
Oh yes, absolutely. We do. Thank you, Christine, for asking. We do a lot of events here at the farm, and we're open for to try to cover our six and making sure that we have, kind of like medics on hand and have like a medic station and things like that. We have kids that run around, and we have people, and accidents happen, and so. Those are the type of things that I would love to bring to the table. I mean, I got my Ranger background and whatnot, but I'm always busy, and it's really hard to track me down on the farm. And but having someone that can come in and that can assist or even teach, we would love to add some special kind of emergency preparedness for a lot of homesteaders who are actually looking to get into that line of specialty where if they had an accident, what should they do? So I would love to talk to you.
Yeah, you probably don't have many needs for the nasal pharyngeal tube or treatment on the farm. But
hey, Colonel, is that a challenge?
We just put some dirt on it, man. Just rub some dirt in it.
Ranger first responder. All right, so we're getting ready to wrap up. Do you guys have any closing comments you'd like to share on either your most memorable experience in service or other thoughts on transition recommendations or anything like that?
I can say, my time as a Ranger, one of the most impactful things actually, sit down with village elders, over food and drink, and some of the most meaningful conversations and diplomacy happen over those times, and helped me to kind of formulate my own ideas that, food and music bring stubborn men to the table. And so when we can connect through food, we connect through music and doing what we need to do, we look at each other as more human, and that transcends any religious, social, racial guidelines, and food brings people together.
Absolutely. That's some great points. Rich, anything?
I would just say, for the veterans that are on their way out, you're not the first one to do it. We definitely understand that process, and take your time and think about what it is you want to do. It's not a race to get to something specific. I know it took me years to figure out what it was I was interested in doing, and had to go through a whole list of jobs that didn't work out. And just recognize that there's a lot of opportunity outside of just, maybe your MOS, and you can apply those skills in agriculture in an incredible way that gives back to, your community as well as builds another one. And just, recognize that there's other veterans out there that feel like you do. And, if you're struggling, reach out. That's really, really, really important. We're stubborn. And so, it's a good place for it to happen. So I would just encourage them to do that.
Okay. Well, thanks both of you for both of those comments, and Rich and John, thanks so much for joining us and sharing your stories and your programs and how you both strive to help veterans and veteran communities. So you guys do amazing work. So just as a reminder, Veterans to Farmers and STAG VETS are both unfunded nonprofits. So if you'd like to learn more about how to support these great programs, go to their websites. They're listed there, veteranstofarmers.org and stagvetsinc.org. And then we appreciate everybody's generosity in supporting veterans and programs that help veterans. If you enjoyed Rally Point, consider becoming a member of the National Veterans Memorial and Museum. So just a couple of short announcements. We recently started virtual tours and virtual field trips. For those who cannot travel to Columbus, Ohio, you can learn more about both of those programs on our website. And then for Memorial Day coming up, we've got about 18 pounds packed into a 5-pound bag over Memorial Day weekend. So we've got a virtual race. It's a run, walk, ruck, or roll, depending on how you want to do it. And it's 1 mile, 5K, or 10K, and that'll start the week before Memorial Day. So if you're interested in doing that, you don't have to come to Columbus to do it. You can do it in Colorado, you can do it in Alaska, you can do it in Georgia, or anywhere in between. And then Friday through Monday of Memorial Day weekend, we've got the Wall That Heals that'll be here in Columbus. It's a 3/4 scale replica of the Vietnam Wall. I would encourage anybody who a Vietnam veteran in your life, bring them to the Wall That Heals and learn more about that. We've also got a Gold Star Family Candlelight Vigil Friday night at the museum. So we'll be honoring those families who've lost so much in service to our country. And then on Saturday, there's a motorcycle ride to the NVMM. And then Saturday evening, we've got a premiere of Rendezvous with Destiny. It's a documentary film. It's a premiere broadcast. Nobody else has seen it. It's by Tracy Hunter. She's an Emmy Award-winning documentary film producer, and she features 3 living 101st paratroopers from World War II. They jumped into Normandy, jumped into Market Garden. They fought their way through northern Germany, northern France, and ended up at Berchtesgaden at the Eagle's Nest at the end of the war. So they're going to be here participating in a panel discussion about their experiences on Saturday evening. And then lastly, but most importantly, we've got our Memorial Day ceremony on Monday morning at 10 o'clock. So if you can come to Columbus to join us, I would invite you to do that. If you can't come to Columbus, we'll have a broadcast on our Facebook and YouTube channels. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thanks for the great information, John and Rich. Everybody have a safe weekend. We'll cut to our last video. John and Rich, if you just hang on till the end, I've got one quick question for both y'all.
You bet. Thanks, Colonel.
Thanks.
Wars aren't fought by countries. They're fought by people. Now, hear their stories in their own words. Honor their service in your own way. At the only museum in America that gives a voice to all our veterans. The National Veterans Memorial and Museum. It's more than a museum. It's the new home of the brave.